Welcome all you +2 comedy modifiers back to Solving the Witness, a laid-back annotated let's play where we try to find the underlining meaning behind the witness. And this is a very special episode. This is going to be something I'm going to try to do every 15 episodes. This is the first ever Solving the Witness mailbag. This will be mostly gameplay free, and I'm going to go through the comments and find some of my favorite comments that have been left on the witness, and we're going to discuss them, because the idea behind this show has always been that it's less of a let's play and more of a conversation, an exchanging of ideas on the different types of philosophies and ideologies behind the puzzles of the witness. So we're going to discuss them right here, right now. There will be some moments of gameplay that I will cut to and show as well as we go through this, but this is mostly going to be me talking, so if this is not your bag, thanks for stopping by. I'll see you next week. But thanks for so much for watching. And by the way, I love the fact that this is getting such a positive reaction, this series in general. I know I'm a small potatoes YouTuber. I don't get a lot of hits and likes and watches and all that other stuff. But I do love the fact that when I put up a Solving the Witness video, it may only get 30 views, but it'll get 8 comments. So I love that it might be a small audience, but I love that the audience that is here is participating. So without any further ado and a itchy eye, let's cut to a quick gameplay moment, and we'll do that now. So I just want to bring us to this moment because this is from episode 1. This is the opening and symmetry episode, and Pedro Paulo has a great comment here. I'm probably late. You're never too late. But I wanted to point this out, that the 3 panels here at 47:45 have exactly the same solution. In the first one we have a block in both of the paths. In the second one it's the same as the first, but the blocks all in one path, and the third is exactly the same as the second one. That's something I didn't notice. This is very interesting that we have 3 puzzles right next to each other, and they actually do have the same solution. It's easy to miss that in that they're distorted, but it's very interesting, the idea that there are 3 puzzles right next to each other that are identical. If they weren't distorted or destroyed by the sun, which is what I'm assuming that we are seeing here, these would be really easy, and it'd be very obvious that they have the same solution. So the fact that they have the same solution, I think, is very interesting and worth further evaluation. I don't know why they would have the same solution. I've looked around that area. This is in the boathouse, and I guess in terms of symmetry, they are symmetrical horizontally now, I think, as well. Like, they don't fully fold into each other, but there is a level of symmetry here if they weren't distorted. So the idea of a symmetrical answer in asymmetrical situations seems to be a very interesting concept to apply. Like, you know, the same answer in different situations. I also want to point this out because this one comment really got me thinking, because there's one concept I keep just wailing on, and that's the fact that there is no time in this game. That is because if you go to the one area with the shadows work based off of the sun, and if time were to pass, the earth would move and the sun would move, and the shadows would disappear, or at least get kind of malformed. Here, it is implied that the beating of the sun on this one panel has actually caused it to kind of melt. So I would assume that this is made out of a plastic, or it really, I guess it could be a glass if it's been like there for like eons. But this definitely implies the passage of time. It's hard for me to believe that it would be designed this way, that someone would make it appear to be melted on purpose. This definitely seems to show the passing of time here. However, in later streams we will also find evidence that things were designed to look broken. So this is just a very interesting little bit that I don't think we spent enough time on when it came to this area of the video. This is my first video. I didn't know what I was doing yet. Episode 2, this comes from our Theism and Buddhism episode. First comment comes from Dracon84 for the explanation of the dog. There are two parts to it. Partially, it is an office dog for the company that made the game, which, of course, it's just an Easter egg. That makes a lot of sense. But also, it's referenced in video 4, which I assume is the video in the lighthouse, which I'm not sure if we watched 4 yet. I'm not sure which one we watched and which one we haven't. There's going to be an episode way down in the line where we watch all the videos, but I got to make sure I have all the codes and stuff like that. But definitely something to think about here. Two things I want to bring up. The poll that is here in minute 7:30, I'll put that on screen. The poll is facing in the right direction to solve the puzzle, but the pole is twisted so the panel is facing the rock. So the panel is like the one in the shaded forest. They originally have an easy solution, so the player would have to think what the solution should be. That's an interesting point. I don't really remember that puzzle. We'll have to go back, and actually I'll go back and watch it right now. The pole. What are you saying about the pole? Is there something about the pole that I need to observe? It's a cool pole. I'll give you that. It is a really cool pole. In that clip you just saw is something that I did not understand at the time, but luckily it was explained to me by Pedro Paulo here, saying that what Mike777 in the chat is trying to explain is the pole is actually facing in the right direction, but the panel has been twisted, which is why it's hard to figure out that you need this like other perspective, because it was correct, but it looks like it's been moved. So again, this could argue that there is someone trying to like sabotage me, the same way we had that argument in the Shady Trees area when the pole is bent. It's like something had to make it so that moved. Is it a person that doesn't want me to see the answers? That's a really good point. I had not realized what was trying to be communicated to me, but other than the pole and the Shady Trees, I didn't really have any other examples of sabotage. So it's interesting that we were able to uncover another one. Thank you for that. This one I love. There's two comments here. One is from Matthias. Matthias says, I highly doubt the interpretation of those puzzle solutions being shapes as letters. The shapes do not really look like the letters. And then a month later, Dracon84 comes back and says, you can change the solution of the first series here to spell thesis and make it more, or theist, excuse me, and make it a little bit more clear. I love the idea that we have people in the chat with conflicting views of things. I love that we have both sides of the argument having this discussion here. I definitely think that the idea that the puzzles spell things is a far out there one. It doesn't come up enough. Like, other than theist, we never really found anything that seemed to be spelled to me in the solutions to the puzzles, but maybe we're missing it. I love the fact that we have people watching that have both views of this. So thank you again just for watching and bringing your unique perspectives to this game. Matthias also has another comment here that I really like. The contradictions that I mentioned in this about there being different views of religion here can be resolved easily by assuming the witness has no intention of advocating any religious, spiritual, or intellectual tradition. It merely shows them to you for you to explore and make up your own mind. I super agree with that, and that's something that we're gonna build on throughout this playthrough, because later on when we get more into the hexagons and the 6 different viewpoints that are constantly being expressed through this game, it definitely does not seem like any one of them is correct. It's more of these are the different viewpoints you can see things from. So that's a fantastic point. Thank you for that, Matthias. Now we are on to episode 3. This is the Trees of Knowledge episode. This is the orchard, and this is where I first find the X flowers by the Windmill. And Dracon84 goes on to explain the pattern of the flowers in the windmill, I think, is mainly to clearly indicate that the theater is the most important place to figure out what this game is about. The 6 themes, I told you we'd come back to this, that the videos present are presented in all areas, and I think you need to interpret the areas in terms of these 6 themes to figure out what the game is actually about. So it could be very simple, like X marks the spot type thing, but it's not so much standing on it, but standing under it in the theater so you can watch the videos. That actually makes a lot of sense to me. I dig that as a solution because it makes sense, and it's immediate, you know? Like, it's like, yeah, it means this. It is a clear, distinct definition. I like that. Also, if you look at the complete picture of the flowers, there's actually 16 flowers. Maybe it's possible to divide the island into 16 relevant areas. Some areas have flowers in them, although I think all of the flowers that look like this have probably been found. That's a very interesting point to bring up. I have heard that these flowers are all over the place, and I've mentioned before that there is one in the swamp area which has not aired on this show yet, but it's red in tint, and there's also a reddish one that's in the X area. The other thing that bothers me is there are 2 by the opening of the door of the boathouse, which is the symmetry area. So the fact that they're kind of symmetrical there, I find very interesting. I will also point out the one at the top of the mountain. So I definitely think these flowers are important. The idea of dividing up the island is also a very interesting idea, because as Matthias will say in a comment a little bit later, the idea of the X's being beams that are crossing and perhaps them separating different parts of the island, something to consider. I don't think 16 areas is really a logical number. There's definitely less than 16 areas in my brain, but maybe if we go through and count them, we'll hit 16. Would you like to count with me? So there's the intro area, there's the symmetry area, there's the trees, there's the quarry, there's the shady trees, which I guess we could say is 2 because there's the positive and negative of the shady trees. There's the keep, which again I guess you could say is 2 different areas because there's the maze and then there's the walking maze type thing. There's the treehouse, there's the swamp. I'm getting closer to 16 than I thought I would. There's the boat, which I would call its own area. There's the bamboo sound forest. There's the monastery. There's like the weird area that doesn't have any puzzles where the Holy Grail thing is. There's the mountain, and then there's inside the mountain. I don't know, I was just roughly trying to fix it into 16 different areas. Just a thought. Pedro's back. Pedro Paulo says, I also always find it weird that there is no laser for the orchard. Why? I don't remember where, but I saw an interpretation that could explain that. The orchard is part of the tutorial initial area. Let me explain. The orchard is next to the tutorial of the squares and dots small area. There are 2 types of puzzles that are self-contained logic symbols. Environmental clues are one of them. Okay, so that's a very interesting point that I had never considered, just because it happens so early in the game. When you leave the castle, you don't really activate a laser, first off. And then you do come across a bunch of puzzles, the touch the black dots puzzles and the separate the white and black square puzzles, and they also don't actually activate anything. So I guess you could tie in the orchard with that area where it's just teaching you how to do things. Huh, that's interesting. Also, I didn't think would be easy to understand the apple tree puzzle in the town without having done this area. But I don't think that matters that much because the town is supposed to be the laser that mixes everything. So it wouldn't be a satisfactory answer for the reason for the orchard. You would be reversing the logic. The puzzle in the town exists because the orchard exists, not the opposite. That's a good point as well. But the idea that that's just a tutorial area, it's an answer, but it's not a satisfying one. It kind of just begs the question again, like, what do the other panels also power? Because everything powers a laser, but those are the only puzzles that don't power anything other than each other. Like when you solve one of the black dot puzzles, it powers the one next to it. And when you do the black and white squares, it powers the one next to it. But when you complete them, you really don't get anything. I'm now kind of suspicious because if you don't know, I'll bring this up again, the Willy Wonka ending I keep talking about kind of resets the island, puts you in a flying magical elevator, and restarts the game. What if you don't do those puzzles? Do they actually power something? We've just never noticed it being off because it's always on immediately, because it's always the first thing you kind of run into. There's not a reason you have to solve those in order. That is an interesting concept. That requires more investigation. Matthias asks, the white flowers, the ones that make the X, could this be an apple tree flower? I don't think they are close enough. I'll put both of them on screen. They're close, but I think you could make them more obviously the same thing, as that was the point you were trying to get across. It's a good idea, though. Maybe we should try to identify this flower. What could this flower be? Hey, I'm back. I did some flower research. I know that it just looked like a jump cut to you, but I actually spent a lot of time researching flowers, and I looked into the flowers that make up the X. A lot of people, for some reason, call them daisies. I do not believe that they are daisies. They are very closely associated to me with daffodils. If you look at the daffodil and you look at the flowers in the Witness, they are very similar because it's that kind of open look and then the yellow in the middle. It's definitely not a lily or a lotus, because we definitely see those in the river. Or not the river, the pond. Those are definitely what those are. So this is something different. So I eliminated possibly lotus from this argument completely. Daffodils do look very similar. They tend to grow near roads and fences. And I don't know, I think they're always kind of on a path. Like, they're never like super hidden off somewhere. But I mean, the Witness is all paths, so it's kind of hard to make that argument. I think what I find most interesting is all the daffodils I found have 6 points. And, you know, we talked about hexagons and the 6 major points of the Witness, which we haven't established what those 6 points are, but we'll get to it. The idea of this being a daffodil kind of makes sense, but it looks to me, the more I look at it, the flowers in the Witness, they have 7 leaves. So the idea that maybe we are adding one more, since everything is in 6s that we discussed in terms of the hexagon and just the idea of 6 being a major component of everything in the Witness. The idea that perhaps the flower is a 7th. It's an interesting idea. But I also found a flower that does have 7 leaves. The only problem is it grows a little bit taller, so I kind of want to disqualify it. But I want to bring it up just because of the name. It's called a cosmos. So the cosmos flower looks very similar to this flower as well. It's not as pointy, but it does appear to have 7 leaves, at least in the picture that I found. Maybe I just found a weird cosmo. But it can grow up to 30 inches tall. 30 inches is not as tall as I originally thought it was, but that's still like, it's like over 2 feet. So maybe not a cosmos. I just thought it was interesting that there's a flower called the cosmos that kind of looks like this. Very interesting. It just dawned on me, the belief that started this whole series is we're looking for puzzle number 666. And I thought we were doing that because it's the devil's number. But now I'm kind of thinking that 6 is important in a different way when it comes to the Witness because of the hexagons and the 6 videos. Maybe there is more to this whole 666 puzzle than I originally thought. Moving on to Praise the Sun. the next video here, Draken84 brings up, it might be relevant that you're tracing predetermined path here, because this one's all about using glare in the sun and light to see the path that you need to do to solve the puzzles. All the puzzles in this area have just a single correct solution, which is almost unique on the entire island. I disagree with that statement. I believe most of the puzzles only have one solution. Like thinking back to Symmetry Island, there's the one where you're tracing, that only has one solution. The trees only in the orchard only have one solution. The glares only have one solution. The drawing through the shadows, those only have one solution. All the puzzles in the keep only have one solution. When you get into Tetris and the black and white dots and stuff like that, and the tree house, like then there's some extra solutions there, but I would say for the most part, they all have only one solution. And I think it's very interesting to think about it this way. I mean, there are puzzles that have multiple solutions, but they can only be done one way, if that makes sense. Like in the tree house, there are puzzles where, depending on where you end, the thing will flip in different directions. You guys getting this mime? But there's only one way to do those as well. I always bring up whenever there's a puzzle that has more than one correct solution, because it beckons back to this concept that I'm worried about, which is when a puzzle has more than one correct solution, is there a more correct solution? Is there a certain way, based off of a rule unknown, that perhaps I will learn later or discover later or manifest in some other way, that puzzle should have been done for some sort of ultimate solution? I don't know, and I'm worried about that, but I find it to be more of a rule that there's only one solution than there being multiple solutions. So I'm sorry, I just said your name so I could yell at you, but that's what happened. Sorry, Draken. Draken, though, makes a great point at the next one. Back when we were doing the sun puzzles, I stupidly say, and it still bothers me that I said, it bothered me so much I went out of focus there for a moment, that I looked at the puzzle and said, it looks like a ship wheel when it clearly looks like the sun. It dawns on me, says Draken, do you know the sun temple puzzles look like? A hexagon. It's another hexagon. I always just say, oh, look at all the sudden weird appearances of hexagons by the mountain, but these hexagon puzzles are right here in the Sun Temple, and that's a very, very good point. It's another appearance of the hexagon. Moving on to still reflecting, Matthias has a point about the juggler. Those juggler stones, they look exactly like a puzzle's ending, just like the arcs from the mountain from the inside. When we get to the mountain, we will see, or at least when we get on YouTube, the arcs of the mountain. I'm already in the mountains on Twitch. There are these big arcs, which are very interesting. I have a fan theory, says Matthias, that the arc is the symbol of a goal, the final ending. The mountain is in that shape. Also consider the underwater cathedral and the door that leads to it. So in my interpretation, the juggler is looking up and sees no stones. He is oblivious to the fact that if he were to only look down, he would see the solution. The goal is right in front of him. It wasn't right in front of him all the time. What he is trying to do is illusionary. Reality is right there. He just doesn't see it because he insists on looking where his presumptions tell him to look. This is a great idea. This is almost cruel, almost mockery. I'm reading his comment again, but only almost. I see images of this kind of futility all across the game. For me, it's another saying, stop looking, start seeing. Don't look, Proofrock, see. Listen to Stay Doomed. It's a good podcast. In any case, I like all these points because it does mirror the other illusion when the guy's reaching for the Holy Grail, but behind him in his shadow, he's already holding it. So this idea of the struggle, but the solution being elsewhere, like right next to them, is a repeated theme here. And I like the idea of the arc being, the arch is a thing that represents knowledge and a solution, especially with what we know about the mountain going forward. Draken brings up interesting observation that the juggler is juggling 6 balls, since the game has 6 themes, with the 6 videos, of course, being the introduction of the themes. Overall, there's a bunch of statues that show people being sad or horrified, where another perspective shows a friendly showing instead. The illusion seems to be that these people think they can't reach their goals, but they actually have already reached them. This is very interesting. This is again a theme that keeps coming up, that I keep stumbling upon when I'm talking and playing the game, that the message of the game tends to be, hey, don't look into this too much. You're wasting your time. The answers are not here. Go live a life. Instead, I'm going to sit here and record more videos of me overanalyzing this game. He goes on to explain, Draken does, those 3 extra balls are puzzling though. I honestly can't think of anything they could refer to. Well, thinking about the story, I've been hypothesizing that the areas tell a very specific story about 4 characters, and we are the 4th character. Not sure which one yet. Maybe these 3 balls represent the 3 other characters that the PC has lost at some point. Not sure I understand that quote yet. I'm kind of reaching here, but it does fit in with the hypothesis I'm forming that the story right now, that it does fit very well with so many things you're pointing out in the game. Thank you for your astute observations. Thank you for commenting, Draken. I'm sorry I kind of insulted you earlier. Now it's time to enter the windmill, and both Pedro and Draken want to bring up this point to me. I say in this clip here that this puzzle looks like the theater, and they want to correct me and tell me that the theater is actually a hexagon. First off, the fact that it's a big hexagon, probably super important since hexagons are so damn important. However, what I'm actually saying, this is the shape of the actual theater, like the square box. Like the part you walk inside of after you start the video is a square box with an opening in that exact place where there's an opening in that panel. That's what I'm saying is the theater. There's the octagon around it, and it surrounds a theater that is in the shape of that panel. I don't know where I edited it, so I don't know if I'm pointing at it. But you get me. You guys are smart. You watch this series. But I just want to clarify this. I think this is kind of interesting symbolism. The idea of the theater, the shape of the theater being the solution. And with the X probably right above us, the idea that this theater is the solution. I think that makes a lot of sense. Let's go into the shadows. I called it in the shadows. I wanted to call it into the shadows. I screwed it up. Sometimes I screw things up. But Draken brings up a thing that I'm also screwing up. You are so focused on the idea that time doesn't exist in this game, and you are correct. Oh, I'm not screwing it up. And while it's fundamental to understand this game, it's just a small part of the larger picture. I think you might be distracting yourself with tunnel vision here. Luckily, your editor is very observant. Why, thank you. I think that actually is great symmetry with the juggler. I keep looking at this one thing going, why is there no time? And so focused on that I'm missing other very clear elements, like the shadow of me juggling. So it's a thing that I always want to think about. I do have tunnel vision on it, because I do think it's a very interesting concept. And it's also a thing that I feel like I can prove more, and I like sounding smart on this show. So I keep proving the fact that there's no time, even though the melting panel kind of really throws a wrench into that whole theory. So I will definitely try to look at other possible solutions. Draken also says for this area, and this is the most the witness statement I can think of, the shadow of the hanged person might definitely be intentional. Totally. I'm not making fun of you. I totally get that feeling. It's that could absolutely, possibly be true. I just totally get that. I feel like part of the story is that someone killed themselves, but I'm very much looking for more clues to that. I'm kind of half guessing. I think that's a very interesting concept because I keep putting out the theory that there are other people on the island, or there were other people on the island. And it would then beg the question, well, then where did they go? Maybe they're dead. Of course, if they're dead, there'd be a body, but maybe we're in some sort of world where like all the faces and stuff like that we see in like the trees and stuff like that, maybe that's what happens to those people. Or maybe they become statues. It's an interesting idea. I definitely like the idea that there's a story in here about a suicide, and I'm definitely going to keep a lookout for that as I continue on with the game. Pedro agrees with you. I pretty much agree with everything Dracon said. Yeah. But he wants to point out this one thing. I think the panel at 11 is giving us a message. I love this panel. Let's show that panel right here. Yeah, this should count. And then I think I can do this. No. Okay. At least this is not one that shuts off. And forgive me if I already said this, Mike. I already did trees. Because I wanted to complain about trees, basically. I could do this, but then I hit it here, and I hit it here. That makes me hit it, so it's definitely down here. Up would make me hit it, up would make me hit it. And then I kind of get stuck here. Technically, I could go up here, but then I hit, and then I hit, and then I hit. So it feels like this has to be the way to go. I'm trying to figure out what is tree and what is not tree. Maybe it's this? No. What am I missing here? Just look at this again. Seeing what is... Well, technically it's broken. That's interesting. Am I supposed to assume that it's still connected? It does kind of look like the Jakar symbol. That's interesting. Oh, wait a minute. Smart boy. This panel is only difficult, this is again Pedro speaking, because you overthink it. He being the designer of the game, is saying stop assuming how the answer should look and just see the whole picture. I love this puzzle. I think it's very interesting to just have it be a very simple solution, and it's a reminder of Occam's razor of like stop trying to overcomplicate things and see like the answers right in front of you. Now let's overcomplicate things and talk more. The more I read these comments, the thesis statement is stop doing this. And I'm not going to because I enjoy it too much. But maybe that's the message. It's about enjoying life through the game. Matthias then says, not wanting to sound negative, oh, but I believe your logic is flawed, oh, which I'll try to paraphrase here. 1, there are no seasons on the island, and the sun does not moon. 2, from that we can conclude there are no natural changes on the island at all. 3, the panel pole is bent. This is of course talking about this panel that is shifted away from the shadow, but instead of it being, it's definitely supposed to be here, but it's been moved there, so something had to move it. As before we concluded that there are no natural changes on the island, this means someone must have intentionally bent the pole. Here's why I think it's flawed. Hit me with it. The observation that the bent pole might just be as well to show us that the no natural chain hypothesis is wrong. From the observations of no seasons and the standstill sun, it cannot be concluded that there is no natural change on the island at all. Trees do shake in the wind, the windmill turns, and all kinds of things move. The fact that things move does not mean that there is time, though. There can still be forces enacted on things. Like, the boat moves because there's a motor in it. The windmill turns because we activate it with a panel. So the trees can move because it has the wind actively working as like a source of a push. Granted, you can then ask where's the wind being generated if the earth isn't spinning and things like that. I do see your point, but the fact that the wind moves does not imply time to me. They go on to say, and there's another potential explanation that I might have overlooked. And I promised that I would stop focusing on my time thing, so hit me with it. The panel might have already been placed there in its bent state in order to convey the impression that the puzzle has been tampered with. Go on. Have you seen the meme about the young Earth creationists claiming that the devil buried all the fossils in order to irritate us? It may not be like this in the world, we know, but it's similar to this in the Witness. So the idea that it was designed bent to kind of create this paranoia that someone is sabotaging us, but no one actually is. That would require more evidence, I think. But I don't know. That's such a weird theory. That because it's still someone sabotaging us. It's someone purposely making it wrong, though. Rather than it having been perfect at one time and then someone destroying it. Someone purposely making that area wrong as part of the challenge and puzzle of this. It's just as valid a theory as any of the other things we have, so that's definitely an interesting thing to think about. It's still someone screwing with us. Don't screw with me. Draken also wants to say it's interesting that there's a lot of different animals on the island, but I think all of the visual illusions creatures only occur once. We have a deer, we have a turtle, we have a crocodile, we have an octopus, we have a bird. We have an octopus? There's an octopus in this game? I've seen turtles. I think I've seen a turtle. I've seen the deer. I've definitely seen the crocodile. I don't even know what is making up that illusion. It looks to me like it's just a crocodile. I don't remember an octopus. I will have to look for an octopus. Lots of other ones too. I still want there to be a masquerade-style mystery for them, but it's probably something else. I never thought to look into the symbolism of the dead deer. Why is the deer dead? This is a thing that bothers me. I'm glad I could open your eyes to this. The idea that there was a relationship that has ended does fit very well with my understanding of the game's story. So maybe I should look more into all of the animals on the island and try to understand the symbolism for all of them better. In fact, I scrolled too much. In fact, many of the other things that the game should be looked at symbolically, for example, the white flowers in a cross, yeah, let's talk more about these flowers, as stated by the artist in an AMA, as, oh my god, you have the flower. Oh my god, we actually do know what those flowers are? So much for Cosmos. I'm looking up the flower. Oh my god, that is definitely the flower. Okay. So the flower is Anemone nemorosa, or a wood ammone. I don't know how to pronounce that, but that is definitely the flower. 7 petals. Ooh, that's very interesting that they revealed what that was. Continue to talk about it. If you look at their symbolism, you see that the red and pink ones symbolize death or unrequited love, and the purple ones symbolize evil. Protection from evil. I think the locations of them might be to uncover more parts of the meaning of certain areas in the game. I don't think there are other people on the island, but I do think the puzzles have been designed in a way to give the impression that sometimes they try to help you and sometimes they try to sabotage you. I think it's related to 2 of the core themes of the game. That's very interesting stuff. Thank you so much for that. That was Pedro, right? No, that was Draken. Draken, thank you so much for revealing what the flower was. Here I was thinking it was a cosmos, but it's definitely these flowers. Very interesting that there's symbolism tied to red being death, because there is a red one. And the red one, this hasn't come up on the episodes yet, but it will, is submerged. Like it rises up, almost like a rising from the dead. That is very interesting. That is a fantastic point. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Hey, I'm wearing a different shirt now. It turns out this took more than one day of filming. So, sorry about the weird change in hair and lighting. It's a different day, and I'm sorry. Let's jump back into it. This one comes from Walking the Labyrinth, and this is from Draken, and they go on to say the audio log from Ryonin, I forget how to say it correctly, is extremely important, significant by the yellow/orange color. Yes, there are a few audio logs that are in fact orange. I believe there are 6 of them, and they are important, but I haven't found all of them, so I haven't made that big connection yet. But I have noticed that there are some that are other colors. The yellow logs signify the 6 main themes of the game. This makes a lot of sense because, again, we've been talking about the hexagons and stuff. We need to establish what the 6 are. I know that there are 6, that's something I've known for a while, but I haven't, really expressed it through the gameplay because I haven't gotten to that part in the game in terms of what's going up on YouTube, and it's something we need to establish. It's definitely something that, for theory reasons, we need to establish. This one fits with theme 3, a single-minded pursuit of your goal will reward you. This is a direct contrary to the 4th theme, searching the truth will destroy you. I definitely feel like searching the truth to destroy you is the thing that I keep hitting, because I keep feeling like this is fruitless. I haven't felt like what I'm doing is supposed to be rewarded, or at least I haven't gotten that message from the game nearly as much as I got, yo, stop, this is a waste of your time. But here we go. In a way, this game is all about looking at opposites and trying to find out which one wins out. I like that theory. We see that ideas in most areas, although I have not gotten the truth about all the areas yet. There's so much of this game and so little time. I totally get that. There is a lot of thinking one way and then doing the opposite. Like when it came to the Shady Trees area, there's the one where we avoid the shadows, and then there's the ones where we actually use the shadows as the path. In the keep where we are now, we walk the path to solve the puzzle, and then later we walk the path is the puzzle. So that kind of reflection and contrary beliefs and thoughts, being opposed forces working together almost, does seem to be a theme in this game. I don't know about one idea ever winning out over the other, though. I'm not sure about that part of it, because a lot of this I've talked about yin and yang, the good and the bad, the equal of light and darkness. I think it's more of just opposites existing together, not one not outweighing the other, and just kind of finding that equilibrium in the force. For every series of puzzles like this, Draken goes on to say, the last one changes things up in a fundamental way. For the hedge mages, you are looking at your environment to find the true path. For the first 3, for the last one, you look at the puzzle panel to get there. Right. It's also to speak towards the themes of the area, although that's probably a topic for a next video. Here we go. But yeah, I absolutely believe that the last puzzle in most of them forces you to think in a way that you're not supposed to be thinking. It's almost like it's a trick. Like they seem to all follow a pattern, and then at the last second it's like, no, turn that off and go a different direction and solve it this way. There's been many a puzzle where it looks like it gets progressively harder, and you just have to do more and more, and then the last one's just So I definitely think that idea of building a pattern in your mind to then trick you at the end is a common trick of this game. It's kind of the what's one of those puzzles? Spell or say P-O-P, like what that spells 3 times. Do it now. Go as fast as possible. All right, now do it 4 more times. What do you do at a green light? Did you say stop? You go at a green light. It's that type of trick where kind of doing this, the opposite of insanity almost, as weird as that is to say, where doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different results is insanity. Doing the same thing over and over again and it being correct, then seeing it not work anymore, it's kind of like, well, no, this is the result I'm supposed to get, and forcing yourself to think in another way. And that's something that the witness loves doing to you. Draken continues and says, one thing I've noticed about the side of the keep, by the way, is there are white roses everywhere. White roses symbolize purity and grace, although the source that I've found also says that ivory roses also mean thoughtfulness, which might be important to the side of the keep. I'm not sure. I think the idea of symbolism through flowers is something that we really have to dive into. This is a really good point here. Not sure about the meaning of the relationship between meditative mazes. There doesn't seem to be a very clear connection there, but something. That's just the thing that I thought was cool. That's something I had done recently. I went to a garden and they actually had one of those like reflective labyrinths and walked through. And I, of course, looked at it and went, the witness, I see it. So I don't know if it's completely connected, but it definitely feels almost like a lot of this game is inspired by that. Matthias is back. Matthias says, for me, the keep is symbolic of human societies, especially urban ones. Society can be maze-like. On one hand, you have written and unwritten rules that you have to navigate, and the end of each maze, you have to repeat the path you took and make it explicit. This appears to me like a metaphor for accountability. You always have to be ready to justify your actions because you might get accused of having broken the rules of society. I really like this interpretation, since a lot of what this is understanding and traversing the rules of the game and kind of using that as a parallel of understanding and traversing the rules of society. Love it. On the other hand, you have the often quite literal maze of public authorities. Who hasn't ever had to visit some public office? Yeah, tons of times. Was sent from one room to another, waiting in a room, and it felt like being trapped in the maze. That's kind of an interesting idea, of the idea of the maze representing those cattle calls when you're at the bank or when you're at the DMV that you have to walk through. That's kind of fun. I like that idea. I like that idea a lot. Note that the fields on the other side of the laser look like a checkerboard when viewed from above. This again kind of close to my idea that this is supposed to represent chess. Every other square is slightly darker in tint. The sub-region I see as symbolic of the status groups of human societies and privileges, the poor, the rich, the insiders, and the outsiders. It is about securing your position, accumulating wealth, and making sure that others won't take it from you. It's like a game of chess. I think that is a beautiful interpretation of the keep. Also, the game of chess itself reflects the different groups of classes and of society, from the pawn over the priest and the knight to the king. In this way, I see the keep as representing the vertical structure of society on one side, from the lower class to the higher class, the horizontal maze to the other side, with all the things and rules you need to keep in mind in order to navigate the maze that society has created. I actually really like that interpretation, because above where we are, we do have like the king, the queen, the rock star, and the police. And also those who entertain the king, like the swordsmen and things like that. Underneath, we see the preachers, the clerks, the businessmen. I think there's like a janitor down there as well. And there is a pathway that goes down there, but it is blocked. So this idea of almost the illusion that it is possible to go from the lower class to the upper class, but there is something blocking the way, I think is a brilliant interpretation of this area. So fantastic job to you, Matthias. And I believe all those comments came before seeing the next episode, which was statues, which is mostly about all the things I just talked about. So let's see what our viewers had to say. Draken goes on to say, I think the statues to an extent call back to what Burke was saying earlier about power and knowledge being in the hands of a few powerful people, while the masses have to toil away in their service. However, I don't think that's the whole story, since the whole game is about truth-seeking and such. I think that this side of the keep has a lot to say about how we relate to our environment, and that looking to others to guide you can lead you to a dark place. Very interesting interpretation. I like that as well. I'm going to read more before I give you my opinions on what you're saying. Also, these statues continue the theme of appearing to be one thing and actually being something else. The king is disinterested in the person asking for their attention. The queen is only interested in material goods because she's looking at her ring and she's not actually looking at the guitar player who is waving. That's a good point. There is also a priest who appears to be preaching, but he's actually collecting money. That's hiding underneath. Very good. That theme is very striking across the island. The Tagore quote, who I'm sure I'm saying that wrong as well, next to the guitarist is actually a very important meaning. The idea is that the artist has to put God or truth, whatever God is using as a symbol of truth throughout the game, into all of their works, and the people still ask the artist what they meant. The artist gets frustrated since they've shown everything through their art that they have made. So it is not the artist telling people that they can't have the truth. It is the artist saying they've already told the people the truth, and people aren't looking for themselves. That is fantastic. They refuse to do work of searching themselves, which is the theme that we see echoed in this area in more quotes too. There could be a nod to Jonathan Blow's feels about explaining his work too, but this type of interpretation might be too coincidental. I don't think it's a coincidence. I think that's 100% what's being said here. I'm sure Jonathan Blow is asked constantly, hey, what does braid mean? Or what does the witness mean? And I'm sure his answer is, well, go play it and figure it out. I didn't make that game so I could explain it to you here. Go play the game. It's free on PlayStation. I don't know if he says that part, but I believe he would. Burke did tell us that the witness tells us more about Blow than truth-seeking. Yes, the idea from the witness, everything's from the witness, from the Windmill video, that what we will truly learn from this game is not more about the world, but more about how Jonathan Blow sees the world. Love that stuff. This tells us the big theme of the keep is a question of searching for ways to truth yourself or being handed the answers, as you did in the hedge mazes, since those only have a single solution, while the puzzles on the side have multiple solutions. That's a very interesting interpretation. That's a very different interpretation of why some puzzles have more than one answer. I really like that idea, that it's meant to be commentary on like structure and search for knowledge. I love that. I love that. The hangnail quote talks about truth is relative. There are personal truth and universal truths. While the personal truths feel more true to us because they feel personal, we can agree to ourselves that it's not the real truth. Again, it speaks to our relationship with our environment. The problems of our environment seem less real, but that might not be the case. They might also relate to searching for truth yourself. Highlight the problem to it, which is that answers you may find may be universal answers, but they also may be personal answers that don't translate well to other people. I also think this might relate to the theme of asking the right questions. I like this as well. I definitely think that this game is up for interpretation. And I guess we could also make then the argument that what type of puzzle is the witness overall? The witness as a puzzle, as a whole, we could say is a panel that has multiple solutions. And it's equally as correct, even though it is different. Or it could be one of the puzzles that only has one solution. That is just as valid. But we need to be open to the idea that the solution to the witness overall as a whole may not be one singular answer. They may be more than one way to solve it and may not even be agreed upon. That's a very interesting thing to bring up. Thank you for that. I turned my light off because it looked bad. Not sure why so much stuff in the keep is broken. Maybe it's actually been conquered. Some stuff broke during the fight and was only partially rebuilt. Maybe this was done by a siege of weapons. It's interesting you brought this up. I know that the streams on Twitch are so far ahead of the stuff we put on YouTube, so I will just put this out as a theory now, even though I have answers in the future. But I think it is quite possible that it was designed to be broken, designed to look broken. It was never designed to be finished. That's the new thing that I'm kind of playing around with. I'm still mulling it over and figuring out that theory, but the more information I'm gaining, that appears to be the case. That being said, I love your next observation. Also, nature never seems broken. When a tree falls down, that is nature. But in a city, or the keep, stuff has to be maintained and rebuilt constantly. Therefore, it always appears partially broken. I love that idea that we have come across many trees that have fallen in this game. Many things have been cut down, and I've never saw it as nature is broken or nature has been disturbed or any of that stuff. I just saw it as like, a tree stump. Okay. This, however, brings up a very good point that the modern buildings or the manufactured items in this world appear to be run down, even though they may be in the same condition as the nature around it. Love that point. Matthias also wants to bring up the mix of technologies, the earpiece and the sword. Implies to me that this applies to all civilized cultures across ages, from ancient to modern. Fantastic. I love that idea, that this is trying to get across the idea that we've discussed way before this whole time of class systems, about cheating, about making your way through society, that this is an old problem, this is a new problem, and this is a future problem, and this is the way to communicate it. Great observation. Love it. Draken comes back to say, at around 12 minutes, you think you might have found a puzzle, but you have actually found the octopus? I found the octopus? Okay, so apparently here is the octopus. I did not realize this was the octopus, but yeah, that's an octopus. Okay, octopus. Check. Draken also says, and I really like this, there's actually no part of the game that is really about religion. Religion is seen as a symbol for truth-seeking in the game, just as science is. That is a really good observation, that science and religion are both trying to make sense of all the crap that's going on around us. And some see them as equal, some see one as more valid than the other. But to boil it down in this game as simply a stand-in for truth, for the word truth every time, like instead of God and science and religion, you just said truth in every one of the quotes you found. That's exactly what you should be doing. That's great. The destruction of the area of the keep seems to link back to the way that other areas have been vandalized as well. For example, the town is built on ruins of some other town. I definitely did not get that the town was built on the ruins of another town. But when I put up the episode where I'm at the town, I will definitely be looking at it. And the way that a lot of the puzzles only work because they have been vandalized. Right. I have been thinking it relates back to the theme of video 4, but I'm not sure yet. I think I may have to, out of order, put up a video where we watch all the videos from the Windmill. I think that would be roughly a 2-hour video if I do all of them, I think. Maybe even more. But I think it's vital to all the things we're discussing. So that might happen soon. They go on to say, I used to really hate how the final puzzle in the keep doesn't follow the same rules as the other ones, and how you can't follow the same path that you used earlier. Of course, I now realize that this entire side of the keep wants us to realize that here you can't rely on the solutions that are handed to you. Bingo. But you have to work and solve the puzzle in your own way. It seems very important to the relationship of two sides of the keep. Yes, absolutely. I definitely think this is one of those times where it's like, we've given you the answer, you've figured out the answer, you figured out the answer. Now we're doing something different. Think in a different way. That's exactly what's going on here. I do love the two sides of the keep. One thing I'm not sure of about the keep that I'd love to know and try is what happens if you finish the back before you finish the front. Does this diagram help? When you're walking through the mazes and then you go up the tower, there's a puzzle there that activates the laser. If you do the back ones with the clear panels that you step on, and then do that puzzle first, does that activate the laser? I assume it would. I assume you only need to complete half of the keep to get the laser done. Well, I don't even need to assume that. I know that to be true. But I think it's interesting that you complete the keep without doing half of the keep. That's weird, right? Now we're moving on to the steps of knowledge, which by the way was a reference to Legends of the Hidden Temple and nobody noticed it. Matthias starts with saying, good observation about the steps of the monastery. Where you ascend, you discover different things from different perspectives. Thank you. I like feeling smart. Now that I think about it, I think the environmental puzzles are symbolic of real-world insight. In my view, the framed puzzles are what you learn theoretically or intellectually. For example, when you learn a life lesson from a wise person or a spiritual tradition, that would be similar to solving a framed puzzle or learning how to solve a series of framed puzzles. But internalizing a life lesson is not the same as realizing it in your day-to-day life. In my view, environmental puzzles are symbolic of finding a way to apply your insights to real life. Ooh, I really, really like that interpretation. Like the framed puzzles, which he means the panels. Framed puzzles is an interesting way to word it, but I get you. Are internalized wisdoms of knowledge, whereas the environmental puzzles are symbolic of wisdom of living, healthy thinking, healthy living, the Buddhist sense of health. You could also call it wholesome or wise or so. I really like that as an interpretation. I think the next level of that would be to take the information you've learned from the witness and then apply it outside of the game, which, to give two sides of it as I drink a beverage, we could say we're doing that right now by having these discussions online about life and philosophy. And we could also say that we're not doing that right now and that we're focused too much on the game when we should be focusing on living outside of life and spreading goodness and intelligence outward rather than spending it inward in the game. There's your yin and yang. Combine this with your observation about the monastery steps. This would mean that while you ascend to the monastery, you learn to apply your wise knowledge to your life, a kind of transformational path. I love any time the word path is worked in one of these. You learn to see your everyday surroundings from a different perspective, which enables you to live in a different way. I love it. This is so good. But that's just me. Not sure how much foundation there is for such a theory in the game. I think that's a beautiful theory. I love that theory. I'm going to store that theory in my pocket, my breast pocket that I don't have because I love it so much. And I'm going to carry it around with me when I live life and see if I can apply the witness outside the game. I guess there are some hints to substantiate it if you combine several audio logs and some of the movies. Well, we'll be doing that plenty. Draken returns and says, important distinction here. It's because I make the claim, I know exactly what he's talking about, that the only things you can interact with are the panels and the audio logs, because you can't jump in this game. There's no jumping, there's no swimming, all that good stuff. In response to that, Draken says, important distinction here. It is not that you can only interact with panels, it's that you can only interact with puzzles. Kind of pedantic? Pedantic? Yeah, it's a bit pedantic. Yeah. I also struggled to say the word pedantic, but yeah, it is kind of pedantic. But I think it's important. I think the audio clips could have been puzzles. That's an important distinction to make, though. The idea that the puzzles are the audio clips. I like that as a thought. But it would have been tedious given that they would have been much larger and hiding them would have been a pain. Otherwise, it would have probably have distractedly increased the number of puzzles in a game, which would have prevented the number being so close to 666. Good thoughts, good thoughts. And then finally, episode 14. We'll be bringing this episode to a close as well. This is on Perspective. Draken says, I don't think it's weird to not have astrology on the island. Astrology isn't a method of truth-seeking. I disagree with you there. Astrology, as much as it's not like an accredited science, I do have friends that are deep in astrology, like really, really deep in astrology, and they see it as truth. They see it as more of a fate-based belief system where everything is written in the stars and, everything just kind of falls in place. It's a more organized truth where when you say, like, why did this happen? You can just be like, stars. It is, in fact, a truth-seeking, because you want to gather information, but you seek it from the stars rather than seeking it through science or through religion or, anything like that. And I think it's not something I personally put a lot of stock into, but I understand why people do. And I also see it as, how do I want to phrase this? Because I don't want to insult anybody. I think I found the words now. I think there's nothing scarier to people than the idea of I don't know. If you don't know the answer to something. And a lot of the world is chaos. Like, a lot of stuff happens and you really don't understand why. And to live without an answer to why something horrible happens or why something chaotic happens can be tough. And to seek truth in the idea that it was written in the stars and like it was fate is something that someone can take comfort in. So I believe it is a way to seek a truth or seek a reason. I'm sure there's a bunch of jump cuts in this because I'm really having trouble finding my words here. But anything that can be given up as the reason, whether it be God, whether it be fate, whether it be the stars, or whether it be science, is a comfort to someone. Being able to point to the thing that is the reason for a problem, existence, a tragedy, is a comfort that is so much better than simply, I don't know, or no, there is no reason. So I definitely think that you can see astrology as truth-seeking, even though it may not be the best place to find truth. I would also like to point out that if there was astrology in the Witness, there are 2 stars. There's the sun, and then there's one in the distant. So the only constellation you can make is a line. That seems pretty fitting for the Witness to me. Draken also wants to say that there is not a 4th side to the thing that I keep saying. We got to go check to see if there's a 4th side to get the end of the story on the laser box. There isn't one. It's a grate. So yeah, there's nothing there. Also, this is the final thing, and it's behind my camera. That's why I'm suddenly moving like this. It might be relevant that the tower that the statue with the Grail is in has 6 sides. All the important things in this game seem to be related to hexagons. It's all coming back to hexagons and these 6 principles. So let me just state this now as we end. I need to really know what the 6 principles are. I know in terms of where we are in the Let's Play and where I am even on Twitch, and as that dog is currently complaining, I haven't gotten to the point where I've seen all the videos. So I don't think I have opened all the doors to get like the codes. I think I have 5 of them. But I think we need to establish what those 6 pillars are. I think we've discussed it enough that even it's a little spoilery because I haven't, gone and watched the videos. If we just take the time and be like, all right, so these are the 6 that we're working with. We're going to just build off of these 6 ideas. Going into something with one mindset will be rewarded. Going into something with one mindset will be destructive to you. Feudalism. Something being futile, for example. These are all things that I think we need to lay out. What are the 6, and then we can discuss them. Because right now we're talking in very vague terms of like, oh, what are these 6 things? What can they be? But like, I know this is an older game and we already know what they are. So let's establish them here. Put them in the chat, put them in the comments to this video, and then I'll establish them in the next video. This way we're all on the same page. Because I think as a community, we've come up with a lot of interesting connections here. I don't know if they're all right, but there's definitely a lot of good stuff to think about here in the comments. So thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to +2 Comedy Gaming and leave more comments below, as I'll be doing this again. Episode 30, because I think this is going to go way over 30 episodes of Solving the Witness, will be another mailbag where I read these. And please give me some feedback on what you thought about this. I decided to go very reactionary with these instead of doing research beforehand and then researching what you have said and then coming back and reporting on it. I wanted it to be more conversational, so I didn't really read the comments beforehand. I read them live and then had a natural reaction to them. Is that the best way to do this, or would you rather I have already read them, have prepared statements for you, and rebuttals and evidence? That's up to you. Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and join me next time when we try Solving the Witness.